Hello, in today's video I'm going to talk to my dear friend Vanessa. Vanessa is not only a dear friend, she's part of the dream team for addicts and those who love them, the project and the exhibition. She's also a highly qualified hypnotherapist, and she's great. She's a good friend. So today I'm going to listen really to Vanessa talk about her friendship with somebody who is an addict, because I just wanted to sort of discuss or to show you how normal it is in our world. There's so many people who take drugs and so many people who drink alcohol and have addictive behaviors, and they rub alongside us, and yes, it's really hard, but it is more normal than we let on, because our first thought when we think of somebody who's addicted is that they're in the gutter screaming for heroin. And yeah, there are people like that. Of course, there are addicts like that, but there are also addicts that function and still manage to hold down jobs, and be our friends, and are also very difficult to be with. And yet, I mean, here is the paradox. I just wanted to listen to Vanessa talk about her experience. And before I finish, I'm just going to show you something from my grandson, who is 6 now, but when he was 5, he did Superman here. Superman has been laminated so that he is now as indestructible as Superman really is. And this is where he has what he calls arts and crafts. I wanted to show you a car. He's like his grandma. He's very creative. I want to show you a car that he's made. So this is a Ford car, and in it there are people driving and going in it, and there's a sat nav. So it's got everything, this car. It's got everything, including an exhaust. So on with the video. Vanessa and Antonio.
Oh,
It's you!
oh no! Oh no! Who are you?
Hello, welcome to the next Patreon video. We're in the studio today, and I've got my dear friend Vanessa here, and Vanessa helps out with so much to do with the Addicts exhibition and with life itself. I mean, really, she's a bit of a darling, a bit of a star. But Vanessa and I both have experience of people who are addicts, who are our friends, and we thought today we'd have a chat about that. Yeah.
Yes.
So what's your story about?
A very, very good friend of mine, somebody I've known since about 2008, is an addict. Would you like me to say what type of addict, or just is it enough that he's an addict?
Well, I think all of you are agog now and you need to know more. Yeah, actually, because addiction is it's such a big subject, and we need some details.
Yes. Okay. So he's an addict of crack cocaine. He's in his 50s, and he has been an addict since he was about 22 years old.
Wow. So how long is that?
Is a good 30, say 34, 35 years.
So the thought of being an addict for 34, 35 years is extraordinary, isn't it? Because you wonder how the body can sustain that much punishment.
Exactly. In his case, his body seems to have sustained it. It's his mind at the moment. It's quite isolating. He's had to move from everywhere he knows to follow his job, and I think he's found that moving away from everything that he knows and integrating, I think he's finding that quite difficult at the moment.
And what when you're with him, how do you know that he's taken his crack or whatever substances? Because
Well, for a number of years, I didn't know.
mm,
He spoke of it as if it was something that was in his past, and so I didn't know that it was in his present. And it was only actually, it was a year ago to this month that he confided in me finally, that this is what he was doing, and he cooked some in front of me. I made a safe space for him to do that, cooked some in front of me, did what he had to do, and completely opened up about it because he wanted to get some freedom and some help for it finally.
and how did that feel for you, having that experience?
I have to say, it didn't faze me at all, because you know, when you love somebody, when you care about them, you want them to be safe, you want them to be well. I wanted him to be safe, I wanted him to be well. So it didn't faze me. It was just, I used to work in a prison, and so a lot of things that I saw there, you lose your sensitivity to it. I'm not suggesting that I saw drugs going on there, I didn't, but a lot of life and a lot of people doing life are there, and so it's just something that needed to be done, something that he needed to bring out into the open, and something that he knew that he could trust me with.
Um, I'm particularly interested that you provided a safe space for him to cook up his crack and take it. How did you know to do that, as opposed to saying, you can't do that, you mustn't do it, I'm going to call the police or I'm going home? You provided him a safe space. How did you know?
Because I believe that when somebody's coming to me for help, I need to have the whole story. I need to see it in its entirety, whether that's a horrible thing to see or not. It's part of his reality, and it became part of mine on that day, in that moment.
Hmm. I think I think Vanessa was really brave, um, and quite inspired to provide a safe space. My feeling very much is that addicts need safe spaces, um, and I'm intrigued that Vanessa just knew that and provided it, because then he took his crack. And what happened to him? What were his reactions then?
Well, he just continued on as normal, and what I realized in that moment is that the normal him that I had known was the normal addict, normal drug taker. It seemed to make a lot more sense why everything was so hyper and fast, why he found it so difficult to be still, why he needed to be up and doing stuff all of the time. That now makes a lot of sense, because I used to wonder to myself, well, why can't you just sit down and relax? Why can't you just be? But
Hmm.
now I understand that it's not, his way of being is completely different, separate to mine, and he has to be by taking what he has to take.
To maintain some kind of equilibrium.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And how about things like rehab?
yes. Well, earlier on this year, it got to the stage where he decided he needed to make some changes. A lot of it was to do with the amounts of money changing hands, um, which are enormous. I mean, eye-watering amounts of money, sums of money. So, from that point of view, for him, it was not sustainable. Um, and also, I think from the point of view of his mind and his being, it was no longer sustainable. So, round about Easter of last year, he booked himself into a rehab facility in the UK, and I drove him there. I
Hmm.
took him, went to pick him up, took him there, dropped him off, and I think he was in there for about 4 weeks.
Hmm.
He was unable to do the full 6 week program, I think, purely financial reasons, which sounds funny, doesn't it, because of the amount of money that he's spent on drugs. But anyway, that's his concern, and he remained on the program for about 4 months after coming out of that initial 4 week or 6 week program.
Mm. And then how is he now?
He had a few relapses, and I think has relapsed again. I recently saw him just before Christmas. He's finding it difficult. He feels isolated where he's living. He lives right out in the countryside. He works. I mean, he still keeps down a job. He's got family. He's got grandchildren. But is finding it incredibly isolating and lonely. And I think is still desperate just for some normality, for to come home and somebody be there and dinner be cooked and, you know, things to do in the evening, normal everyday things that would be part of living in a functional world with a functional relationship. And you know, he's alluded to the fact that he's just not in any fit state to be in a relationship, although I know he would ultimately like to be happy and find somebody, you know, that he could have a meaningful relationship with at some point.
And this is something that I think is quite interesting, is that the lack of connection to other people is very painful.
Very painful, yes.
Yeah. And the dream of having a relationship with someone and that special connection, that special togetherness with someone, and yet his prime motivation to be alive is his crack.
Yes.
Isn't it? Because without that he actually can't function, and that makes him difficult to be with.
Yes.
And this is the circle that keeps happening, I think, you know, in somebody who's taking substances and has become dependent or addicted, which is so difficult. It's the loneliness, the disconnection, and the knowing that you're outside the norm, and you have this possible secret. I don't know if is it a secret for him, or is it known?
I don't think it's known so much within his immediate family. I think people he works with suspect and have put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4. But it's not something that I think in his case he pulled a few people who were closest to him around about 3 years ago together, because he knew he wanted to make some significant changes in his life. The drugs were one thing. There was also making this move away from where he'd lived all his life to where he's living now. So he is feeling the isolation and the aloneness quite strongly.
Gosh, Vanessa, you're a darling. Thanks for telling us about him, and he's lucky to have you, and I know you feel lucky to have him, don't you?
I do, absolutely.
He's a good friend.
He's a fantastic friend. He's incredibly quick in mind. We have a mutual love of a band called Genesis. And yeah, he's an incredibly good friend, and you know, he would and has helped me in times of need, and I will always help him wherever I can, wherever it's possible for me to step in and help him out.
I have to just tell you that Vanessa and I have taken delivery of pick and mix by post, and she's just said, let's have another sweetie, and I said, you need to see this. So Vanessa, have a sweetie.
Oh, I'd love one, Antonio, thank you. It's a pink chocolate conical.
Did you say it was a pig?
Pink chocolate conical pig.
I think I got these delivered You need to see them while I'm talking. Here you are. Because I wasn't very well and I went online because I thought, I know what's going to make me better. It's pick and mix. So I got a pick and mix online delivery. I'm fine now, but the pick and mix has arrived like a week after I became fine again. But it's arrived in time for Vanessa and I. I'm going to have one of these. Can you talk? No, I'll have one in a minute when she can talk. So yeah, you've worked in prisons and you've seen a lot of life, haven't you?
I have.
And tough stuff.
I worked in a prison as a tutor. I taught employability and English as a foreign language.
Tea?
Love some, thank you.
Okay, so you worked in a prison and you taught English.
I taught English as a foreign language, and I also taught employability skills,
Okay.
which was a 5-week course for people to attend. And it was teaching them things like how to do a household budget, how to apply for jobs, thank you so much, how to write a CV,
Wow.
and how to attend an interview, what to wear, what to do, what questions to ask. So I saw a lot of people coming through my classes, and as well as just being as well as being their teacher, I actually liked to spend the time chatting with them and getting to know them, and really finding out what had led them to a prison classroom on that particular time, on that particular day of that particular year.
Because there's a lot of people who are kind of considered the underclass, isn't there, in our society? Do you think that's an accurate description of prisoners?
No, no, not necessarily, and purely because some of the chaps that it was a all-male prison. Some of them had come from extremely dysfunctional backgrounds. They were born to parents of addicts, dealers, all sorts of tragic backgrounds actually, and kind of think to yourself, well, it's not surprising.
You know, I spoke with my hero, Professor David Nutt, this morning, and one of the things he said is exactly what Vanessa said. He said something like, if you are in a very poverty-stricken estate and there is nothing for you, no employment, your family is utterly dysfunctional, and you take something that takes you to heaven, why would you not take it? And why would you not then seek it out for the rest of your life? If it can remove it, if it removes you from that trauma, I think we all know that drugs, the effect of it doesn't last. You know, it leads to addiction, which is almost a different thing, I think. But that first time when the drugs work, yeah, so you saw a lot of that.
I did. The other thing I saw, which I saw them as they'd all been babies at one stage.
Yeah.
And they would have been held by their mothers, and I just think it's tragically sad that they'd. I just think it's sad what had happened to them.
The choices and
the choices and the lack of choice, actually.
The lack of choice.
The lack of choice. That had led them to where they are today. But equally, you could argue we all have a choice not to do certain things. I guess it all hangs on what has become normalised for you in your world.
Yeah.
And just to add to that point, one of the things for me was the saddest thing to see was when you're working in a prison, there's a certain day of the week where visitors are allowed to come in, and it was always in the afternoon, so the afternoon session. So the staff generally try to get out of the prison at lunchtime, just to go out, just to have a walk. So coming back in, you'd see the families arriving to do their visits. And what struck me as really sad were these little teeny tiny children, all dressed up, coming in to visit Daddy. And I used to think to myself, well, I wonder if that now starts normalising a process, a way of being, a life from that early age, when when you coming to visit Daddy.
You put all your finery on. Instead of going to church, you go to visit Daddy in prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like... I can see that. Absolutely. I can see that. And did you find some of your what would you call them? Would you clients? Pupils?
We would just refer to them as the men, really.
The men.
The men.
So did you find any of the men responded to your teaching?
Yes, I mean, for the most part, they're absolutely lovely, charming individuals. They come to education because they actually get educational qualifications that they can use when they leave prison in the real world. And obviously they're there as well to come off the wings for a morning and for an afternoon. And talking to them, being around them, absolutely lovely at times.
And you're quite a stoic person, and there's an awful lot in my life where one has to be stoic, and dear Vanessa here has been utterly stalwart in her support and her inability to be shocked. So you're quite a profoundly rounded person, I think, now. Do you think?
Yes, I believe so. Rounded, yes.
She's not rounded. I'd love to show you one day her legs. She's got legs that start under her armpits and go right the way down to the floor, and they are so beautiful. So that's a bit of personal detail that she didn't know I was going to share.
Oh, sorry.
So I think we'll stop here now, because I want you to know that we have this to get through, and more soon. So bye bye, and thank you for listening.
Thank you for having me, Antonio.
It's so lovely. She's lovely, isn't she? She's lovely. I'll show you her legs later, next time.